Hello, Internet. Just for Nerds here. Today we're actually talking about accepting your nerd. I think it's a pretty important topic considering a lot of people it's becoming much easier, but as we've discussed in previous videos, there's still a lot of stigmatism that comes with being a nerd. So I think this is a fair time to actually kind of go over that detail. Number one, though, is just acceptance. This implies that you have a positive response to the fact that you're a nerd. If you're just now discovering you're a nerd, I have a couple points for you. It's pretty simple. Chill out. Don't fight it. And find another nerd you know and tell them that you've basically come to terms with the fact that you're a nerd. It's really not that hard. You kind of need to sit down and consider what makes you nerdy. If you love something a lot, you find yourself daydreaming about it regularly, you're completely enthralled and passionate about a character, and you want to live your life as that character, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's an infinite plethora of things that could potentially trigger that need to kind of engross yourself in that genre or in that topic, and that's what you're probably nerdy about. So it's really a good thing to kind of discover that, realize what it is, and then use that to kind of flourish your nerdiness into other topics, or just stay on that one forever. One thing I've seen a lot of nerds do, a lot of budding nerds do, is they kind of get overwhelmed with everything that happened before they got into the genre, before they got into the fandom, and it's never too late to accept being a nerd for that particular thing, but you shouldn't worry about what happened. Just jump in. Seize the day. Now's the time. Today's the day. Go, dive in, take a chance. I mean, eventually there may be a day that's not good to be, or to start being a nerd, but today's not that day. I mean, it's never too late, and it's never not a good day to just take all of your time and all of your energy and just dedicate it to loving a thing, researching a thing, building a thing, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, just jump right in and have a lot of fun doing it. And it's rather important to understand what is going forward, and then maybe on the occasion kind of peek back and see things that might interest you. Magic the Gathering is a great example. There's a lot of people who are new Magic the Gathering fans. I've been playing Magic the Gathering basically since I could understand what was going on in the cards. I was lucky enough to have several members, family members in my life who were already playing the game along with Dungeons & Dragons and all kinds of other stuff, and they kind of pulled me under their wing and kind of educated me a lot about the game. But I didn't start looking back at beta cards. Like, I wasn't like, oh my god, what if this combination... No, that wasn't... I played Type 2 Standard, which... that's for another show. But essentially, I played what was current in regards to the rules and what was currently released for the cards. And I didn't worry about things that happened before because, well, why dedicate to that format when I didn't play that format? But just kind of... anything really. If you start kind of getting down on yourself about why you didn't join the fandom earlier, or what people will think about you for not knowing so much about the fandom, considering you are a newer fan, like, don't let that kind of grate on you, because I mean that'll kind of lead to some fear and resentment, and we kind of know where fear, resentment, hate, where all those things kind of led a particular popular Sith, Anakin, and his wonderful path of atonement. Spoiler alert, I guess, if you haven't seen it, too bad. But I mean, that's really just because of Rogue One, which I saw and is amazing. We will have a show for you in regards to a review with one of my dear friends, Blaha, coming up soon, but again, that's for another show. Anakin is both liked and loved, but we know that he could have been one of the greatest Jedis, and instead he was one of the most powerful Sith that ever existed. So either way, you just need to accept where you are currently in your timeline. And that's ultimately it. It's about you. It's not about anybody else. Like, you get to dictate how much of a nerd, how little of a nerd, or what you nerd about. So you get to be selfish in regards to it. No one gets to tell you that you can or cannot be a nerd. No one gets to tell you what you can and cannot enjoy based on how long you've been a nerd. Like, it kind of harkens back to the elites versus casuals episodes that we just released a couple weeks ago, where a lot of people are like, oh, well, you like Final Fantasy 13, that's because you haven't played the other Final Fantasies. Now, granted, I've said that before. I usually say it in a much friendlier light, like, hey, I know you like Final Fantasy 13, but if you played the earlier Final Fantasies, you might see where I might have some issues with Final Fantasy 13. It may be for another show, but I don't particularly like Final Fantasy 13. I actually despised it with every fiber of my being. It actually overtook 8 as my most hated Final Fantasy. And some people may not appreciate that. That's okay. I'm not here to dump on 13, and I'm not here to dump on anyone for liking 13. It's their choice as a nerd. Like, I'm perfectly okay with them liking 13. Would I love it if they went and played other Final Fantasies and kind of got to know the entire genre? Well, certainly. They're not required to, though, and it doesn't make them any less of a Final Fantasy fan if they choose not to do such a thing. One thing you need to understand is you get to take your time in regards to being introspective about any topic. No one can decide it for you, like I said. It is healthy to consider that your mindset and your mentality about these things, it's going to shift, and that's okay. It's okay to jump from a particular topic to another topic and kind of discover where you fall in the paradigm of nerd as you continue to dive deeper. And it's gonna come with a little bit of ins and outs. You're gonna jump into some fandoms and be like, I'm way too deep into this. Turns out I don't like it as much as I thought I did, and you'll jump into others. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But you should also remember to be considerate. Like, there's no reason to be dark-sided about it. Like, a lot of people in the nerd community, which we are hoping to abolish eventually, even though it'll probably never happen, but we want to minimize it as much as possible, are basically the anti-hypers and the kind of, we hate things because they're popular, or whatever. Like, they're a strange kind of elite that no one really should listen to ever about anything. Mainly they are there to dump on things, and they get an empowerment from basically making other people feel bad about things they like. And there's nothing worse than that. Like, if you absolutely love Final Fantasy VIII, or you absolutely love, I don't know, Superman or Batman, like, if it doesn't matter what you love, and no matter how much it's hated or how much it's not respected or whatnot, like, there's no reason for you to get upset about that. Like, you should still love that thing with every fiber in your being and still obsess over that thing, and it help to educate people. Like, you should be looking to educate people about those particular topics. So maybe you can start reversing some opinions regarding those details. And it's always good to get some counsel in the situation. Like, find people who are nerdy, surround yourself with people who are nerdy, and kind of feed off of their excitement. If they're your friends and they're nerds, they're going to be excited that you're nerdy about whatever it is you're nerdy about. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't particularly line up with things that they're nerdy about. Granted, a lot of my friends are huge Star Wars fans. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm actually more of a fan of the Old Republic than I am of anything that's current. It just... it's a cooler time in the Force for me, but a lot of my friends, they're big movie-philes in regards to it, so that's what they focus on, and that's okay. And that kind of leads me into the next point, in regards to kind of understanding the depths of topics. So there are very specific areas of every single fandom and nerddom that exist. You can go down so many rabbit holes in just about every fandom, and there are rabbit holes that people make up. They're called fan theories, and I'm not a particular fan. I'm not a fan of fan theories, mainly because I don't like things that are not canon. Now, granted, I mean, the Old Republic is now canon again, so I can say that, but it's just in regards to the topics of, like, oh, well, this is this way because the game designers inferred or implied that it should be this way, so therefore everyone should believe it's this thing, and I'm going to basically be upset at people who don't agree with me. No, that's not okay. Like, it's fun on some occasions to explore those venues, and they can actually bring up some pretty interesting, like, thought experiments, and various different theories can spin off from them, but ultimately, they're just someone's rabbit hole. And I suggest looking into every rabbit hole, but not jumping into every rabbit hole, because some of them are strange, and that's okay. They're allowed to be strange. It's just not a particular rabbit hole that I want to go down, because I would not have a good experience there. Someone else may, and I want them to have that good experience, and that's something that you need to remember as well. Like, you can always peek in, but unless you know it's somewhere you want to be, it's best not to jump in with both feet. I recommend, personally, as someone who's a new nerd, find a convention that's local for you, that's maybe not too expensive, and just go. Like, I don't think there's anything more educating as a nerd than going to a convention. Even for people who aren't nerds, they can have fun at conventions as well. But whether it's Gen Con, Comic Con, PAX East, PAX Prime as well, BlizzCon, like, it doesn't matter. All those cons are amazing. Dragon Con, can't forget that. It's on my bucket list. I need to go. Eventually, Just for Nerds will be there, and we'll have a great time. But, like, conventions give you scope. They kind of help you to understand how large the community is, especially if you go to, like, an anime convention and you're into anime. It can kind of educate you on how large that community really is and how many different venues and outlets and avenues you have to go down. So it's really an educating thing for a budding nerd to go to one of these conventions, and basically you're surrounded by people who are like-minded, maybe not so much on a positive level or whatnot, but basically they love at least the broad spectrum of what you love, whether that's anime, whether that's gaming, whatever it is. So understanding that is really key, and understanding the large scope, because it helps you to not, it's kind of might seem strange, but it helps you to not get overwhelmed. If you're jumping into Marvel comic books or DC comic books or whatever comic books, and you start looking back to everything DC and Marvel has ever done about Iron Man or the Hulk or any character or even the entire universe as a whole, it's going to be daunting and almost impossible to even dream about assimilating all of that information, because you haven't been part of the community and you didn't experience that when it first got started. Beyond the fact that you may not be able to find those comic books beyond electronically, but like it's the key to understanding that waiting is important, and kind of like getting in, letting your body warm up to this situation before going all the way in. Like, take your time, because a lot of people get lost in regards to it, and it can really turn them off in regards to certain topics or certain nerddoms, and I don't like to see that. So it's good to find someone who knows more about the topic than you do, and ask what a good starting point was. Like, I don't know how many times when I was playing Magic the Gathering regularly and competitively, that I had a bunch of friends who I was living with at the time, roommates and friends of those roommates, who basically would come over when we were having the Magic the Gathering tournament, and they'd mock us a little bit, and it'd be like nice poking jokes at the nerds. Like, it's fine as long as it's in good humor. But eventually they started to warm up to it, and they'd start watching a little bit more intently. And eventually I started getting emails or text messages from those people asking me, hey, what's a good starting deck? Like, if I were to play Magic the Gathering, what do you think I would enjoy playing the most? Like, and these are very important questions, because if you don't find the right guide, they could lead them down the completely wrong path. Like, playing Magic the Gathering is, you can't just pick up a deck and play. I mean, you can if you've played for a while, but there are certain people who gravitate to certain decks. I'm a green-red aggro guy. I like just putting creatures out and beating people to death. It's my favorite thing about Magic the Gathering. Can I play blue-white control, or black-blue control, or basically any other deck? Most certainly. I do not have fun playing decks that have blue in them at all. I just think it's broken, it's busted, for whatnot, but that's for another show. It's understanding people's personality traits and how they best fit in with that community. And being able to guide them, I think, is an important thing for all of the older nerds in the community to help with the younger nerds, because steering them down that, or starting them off on the right path, is really important. But it's also, going back to the rabbit holes of things, nerds have subcategories. It doesn't matter, like, if you just, like, I'm going to learn everything I can to know about Iron Man. Well, there's a lot to know about Iron Man. Like, he might just be one character who has a super suit and that he has a bunch of money. Like, that's the very broadest spectrum of Iron Man. But at the end of the day, there are multiple rabbit holes. You might like House of Iron Man. You might like the Iron Wars. Like, there are so many different versions of Iron Man that you can jump into that would lead you down a different path of which Tony Stark or which Iron Man you actually enjoy. So it's really best to understand that there are stories within stories, and there are, like, it's hard to tell you, but basically there's a rabbit hole inside of every rabbit hole, and there's multiple rabbit holes. There are multiple dimensions inside of every dimension, so you just have to understand where you're going. So it's good to find a starting point. If you're jumping into a miniature game, and guilty as charged, when I got into Warhammer 40k, after I got my first job, I never had any money, because every single time I got a paycheck, I went and bought figurines of paint. Like, it wasn't healthy at all. So it's best to understand that you have a focus, and basically just like it should be pretty narrow to begin with, but it'll branch off as you grow, and that's okay. I mean, it's just, I think it's best to, like I stated before, surround yourself with friends. And nerds are friendly to a degree. Nerds are most friendly with people who they're around who share a similar mindset to them, who are respectful of their culture and are okay with them being around them and expressing who they are as people. I'm most comfortable when I'm talking nerdy. I can talk about just about anything with just nearly anyone. That doesn't mean I'm particularly going to enjoy it. If someone asks me, hey, what's your favorite thing about The Flash? I'm going to light up like a Christmas tree and just go nuts. I don't care how much information they want to have, I'm going to give them every single bit I have. And that's a lot. And that's okay. It's just understanding and educating and preparing people for that information wave. But it's also about understanding that not everyone is going to be excited about that thing, which I've stated in other episodes. But you want to tell your friends who don't think that they're nerds, but you think they're nerds, based on your experiences and your new and kind of what led you into your new livelihood, about what happened and about what it means to you and how it's helped you kind of blossom and become more of the person you are. I was lucky enough to never be offended by being a nerd. I basically been wearing the badge of pride of a nerd for as long as I can remember. Whether it was just for getting good grades or people mocking me for playing comic books or video games, like, it didn't matter. I've been basically playing video games since the time I could walk and talk. I beat my mom at Tetris at a very young age. Like, it just doesn't matter. I've always been a nerd and I've always worn that badge proudly, but not everyone has. So it's helping people to understand what made you a nerd, how the realization that you were a nerd helped you to be more of who you are as a person, and help them explore their nerdiness. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I think everyone is a nerd in some way, shape, or form. And helping people to understand how they are, who they are, and what they are regarding it is an important thing. So once you've gotten a hold over what your nerdiness is, you should really, while you're branching out, try to bring on as many followers as you can, because it's a pretty awesome fellowship, and I think it's the start of a pretty big adventure. There is another part to this Accepting Your Nerd series. Part 2, I should say. It's a 2-part episode. We'll be recording that and getting that uploaded on Wednesday. But ultimately, this is the starting point, and I think it's really important to understand those key points. So to remember to jump in, well, not so much jump in, to wade in, kind of get your bearings, get an understanding for the scope and the scale of the nerddom that you're joining. And then, of course, to assimilate and assume friendships within that community, because they'll really help you blossom and understand who you are as a nerd and a person. And to remember, as you go along your journey and you go through these different rabbit holes and you find out what you're truly passionate about regarding nerddom, whether it's just about being a nerd, which is okay. There are nerds who just love being nerds, and they don't care what it is, they're going to get hyped about it because it's a nerdy thing. But it's also important to help others explore their nerdiness and to continue to educate and to continue to understand and learn yourself. So, without much further ado, I'm going to cut the episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe to us here on YouTube. If you like the video, go ahead and drop a like for us. Maybe even leave a comment regarding some other topics you want. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays we will be streaming. Currently, we're still pursuing our Final Fantasy 15 playthrough, which will be getting uploaded once we complete the game. But those will be streaming on Twitch those days, and those days we're always open to record any of your suggestions. If you just want me to rant about any particular topic, just go ahead and let us know in the comments below. And with that, go ahead and check out our Facebook page. It's Just for Nerds, facebook.com/justfornerds, and you can also follow us on Twitter. So again, thank you guys, and we'll see you later. Thanks.